Welcome to Babblecom 5. This is episode 19 of season 3 of Babylon 5. Grey 17 is missing. Ironic that Power DVD should go missing trying to do these captures, but I digress. Zack is busy interviewing prospective telepaths for combat duty against the Shadows. Inevitably there are time wasters along the way. Sheridan doesn't like having to be so open about it, but can't think of any other way. However, he does remember that Franklin helped telepaths escape from Psy-Corps, so he may have some contacts that could help, if, as one of the notes, they can find him as he remains on walkabout. Elsewhere, a technician is trying to find a dead power relay in Grey 16 with little joy, before vanishing into the pit he's working from. On Minbar, Sinclair's few possessions are being recovered by Delenn and Lennier, but there is also the matter of who will now become Ranger 1. Although she does not jump at the chance as she wishes to remain on Babylon 5, Sinclair's aide assures her that she would be their preference, and wherever she is, the Rangers will be. Back on the station, Garibaldi is examining a Smith & Wesson revolver as Zack comes in to report a strange happening in the Grey sector. Garibaldi is intrigued by the idea of someone going missing on a closed station, so decides to look into it himself, describing the Grey sector as the Bermuda Triangle of B5. Ivanova has managed to find Franklin, although he's now suffering from stim withdrawal. It's been slow to happen because of how saturated your system becomes with them. He demands to know what she wants, but sets a price. Once he gives her the telepath information back up, he retains. No one else is to try and find him until he's worked through his problem. Period. He needs to do this alone. So reluctantly she leaves him to his now guaranteed solitude. A maintenance representative explains the situation to Garibaldi. The access hatch is back in place, the power grid is fine, but both note that an offhand comment that Grey Sector has only 29 levels rather than the 30 the blueprint suggests it should have. The maintenance rep chalks it up to a clerical error as she's walked it and only found 29 levels. Delenn is going to hold her initiation as Ranger 1 on the station. Whilst the Rangers have previously kept a low profile, she says that is going to be changing soon and they deserve recognition for what they've been doing. Just after Sheridan leaves, Neroon appears and also offers his congratulations, but they are less than genuine because he views it as a power play. He offers an interesting summary of recent events, with the warrior caste having achieved dominance in the Grey Council. Delenn then disbanded it in Severed Dreams, and now, contrary to Valen's wishes, a religious caste member seeks to control the Rangers, who logically should be led by the warrior caste. It seems the warrior caste have tolerated the Rangers' course so far, but Neroon now bluntly states that he will use any means necessary to prevent the Rangers coming under religious control. As Lennier arrives, he vanishes. Meanwhile, Garibaldi is counting the time it takes the lift to move between grey levels. Lennier is shocked by Neroon's threats, but Delenn notes he is no longer a member of the Grey Council, and this trouble with the warrior caste has been coming for some time. Lennier firmly believes Neroon would kill her if necessary, but Delenn forbids him from telling Sheridan. Lennier also points out that whilst it has been a very long time since the Minbari killed the Minbari, the rules may now have changed with the dissolution of the Council. Going between Grey 16 and 17, the lift takes twice as long as it should. Garibaldi is suddenly alert and calls an emergency stop on the way back to Grey 16, and then overrides the door controls to reveal a level the lift doesn't recognise, filled with junk and debris. Unfortunately, the lift doesn't stay put. There's no obvious way to call it back given the damage in the area, but he then hears a sound just before calling in and moves to investigate. In a rubbish-strewn room, he encounters a strange speaking doll and is shot by some kind of dart which knocks him out before he can call out. Lennier has gone to Marcus using a curious twisted logic that allows him to go to someone outside the chain of command so that he will not break his promise to Delenn not to go to Sheridan. Lennier notes that if Neroon were ever to even attempt to harm Delenn, the repercussions could lead to civil war in Minbar. Marcus clearly understands this, but Lennier is forthright with him. Neroon is the best of the warrior caste and very used to killing humans, but only a human can confront him. Lennier stresses that he must only delay him. Once Delenn is Ranger 1, that cannot be undone. Marcus understands this and will need to wait for Lennier to track Neroon down. Garibaldi comes to with his Lincoln PPG gone. Then things turn even stranger, as a man called Jeremiah and his friends welcome him to the end of the world. Stranger still, I'm pretty sure Jeremiah has also played Freddy Krueger. Sheridan and Delenn welcome a procession of rangers onto the station. In a pause, Sheridan asks Delenn about her family. Her mother seems to have gone into the Minbari equivalent of a convent when she was very young, so she has rarely seen her since, and her father went beyond the veil 10 years ago. He was not a supporter of the war with humanity, and this may have contributed to his loss. She describes the moment he was no longer able to carry her to the temple. When they both realised that he could no longer take her, they both had a profound sense of loss, but also of love for one another. It's a very tender moment between the two of them. Jeremiah, it turns out, is a big Minbari fan, as they recognise We Are the Universe made manifest. So Jeremiah and his gang have locked themselves away, seeking to achieve a purity of mind and spirit so they can open the door. And Garibaldi would very much like to find one. Speaking of finding, as Lennier is overseeing the preparations for the ceremony, he has passed the news of Neroon's location. As Neroon moves through darkened corridors, Marcus catches up with him and invokes Den Shah, a Minbari fight to the death. Whilst both have been taught how to use the Minbari fighting pike, Marcus is basically an amateur compared to Neroon, who has killed 50,000 humans. Still, Marcus will not back down despite Neroon giving him the opportunity to do so, and the fight is joined. The ceremony begins and Sheridan is surprised that Marcus isn't there, but of course he's a little busy at this point in time trying to stay alive. The robes we saw Sinclair wearing are laid at Delenn's feet after we see the ongoing battle. Jeremiah, meanwhile, looks forward to a consciously directed second Big Bang, as he feels the fact that everything dies is a design flaw of the current universe. Garibaldi hunts for an exit as he continues espousing his belief system. Then Garibaldi feigns stomach cramps from moving one guard, before surprising the other and forcing Jeremiah to take him towards the exit. Marcus is taking more hits, and despite landing some blows on Neroon, is ultimately at his mercy, with Neroon demanding to know why he was put himself through it when he knew he couldn't possibly win. Marcus is defiant to the end, saying as a ranger, he lives for the one and dies for the one, until Tsar in Valen's name. Elsewhere, the ceremony continues. Garibaldi has found the maintenance worker's jacket, but Jeremiah says it's not his group's doing. However, there is a creature there called a Zarg that Garibaldi knows of. Call it an apex predator. It's the cult's way of achieving a physical transcendence by passing on into the afterlife. Garibaldi, of course, has other ideas. Neroon makes it to the ceremony just as Delenn is becoming Intel Tsar and throws down his bloodied pike, noting that there is blood between him and her and him and the humans. They would not follow him, but they would follow her. Then he turns and leaves as Lennier runs off to find Marcus. Garibaldi and Jeremiah continue to search for the exit, but the Zarg has other ideas. Garibaldi makes it back off using a steam pipe, but knows it's a temporary fix. However, he still has his bullets for his old Smith & Wesson in his pocket, so it's MacGyver time. Lennier finds Marcus, and while he's unconscious, he's alive. Garibaldi manages to convert a pipe into something akin to a cannon, and manages to land a shot on the Zarg. Jeremiah has apparently decided he isn't yet transcendent enough to be consumed by the universe. The less said about the Zarg prosthetics, the better, quite frankly. In Medlab, Marcus is unconscious, and Lennier is surprisingly upfront with Delenn, in that he says the one thing she doesn't yet appreciate about her position is that in order for lives to be saved, which is her goal, some also have to be sacrificed, and that was why Marcus was willing to go up against Neroon, who now appears, wishing to speak to Marcus. Notice Delenn is now wearing a ranger brooch. Neroon explains to Marcus, although he appears unconscious, that to hear a human invoking Valen's name and fighting to protect a Minbari when he was intent on killing one completely killed his resolve to go through with the task. He concedes that Delenn may be right, that while they are not of the same blood, they may be of the same heart. He turns to leave, but Marcus whispers after him, asking him if next time he needs a revelation, he might find a way that's a little less uncomfortable. Neroon bursts out laughing, to Delenn and Lennier's consternation. Finally, Garibaldi catches up with Sheridan, who both try to engage one another on recent events, with Garibaldi winning out and giving us a potted history of his utterly random day. I half thought about entirely skipping this episode, because it gets a lot of negativity from the fandom in general because of the bloody Zarg. And James has held his hand up on this one. The whole storyline just falls flat, and basically JMS had larger things to focus on but needed a breather episode, and this is it. So set aside dodgy bullet firing physics and rubbery creatures, and let's focus on the more positive side of it. Starting with Franklin's withdrawal symptoms. Okay, not so positive, but this makes perfect sense. He's been bouncing around fine, but we now find that he's hit a wall because the stims are finally leaching out of his system. And it's having a big impact on him, which in turn causes him to be very cold towards Ivanova. She gets it, luckily for him, but it's a genuine moment between the two of them, which is relatively unusual because he's normally closer with Garibaldi. There's some interesting character development with us learning more about Delene's family background than we've known before. Her mother became a sister of Valeria, which I think is what Lanier called Kosh's angelic form. So basically she went into a convent, is how I understand that. This also leads to a moment of closeness with John, and contrary to what she says, I think he does understand what she's saying. It's also interesting that Neroon is almost as disbelieving of Delene's motivation as the Inquisitor was. He fails to appreciate that she never wanted to be Ranger 1. She's simply fallen into it because of Sinclair's departure. Even Sinclair being Ranger 1 might have been more palatable for him, because he would have viewed him as warrior caste by background, but Valen originally had the warrior caste leading the Rangers when they were first formed, even though largely inactive then. So the idea of Delene being in charge is just completely unacceptable to him. Neroon has an interesting path. He's been at odds with Delene before now, but she no longer has superiority over him. His recognition of Marcus's worth as a human with Minbari qualities is a significant, as Marcus puts it, revelation for him, and suggests that his relationship with Delene could improve from this point. Whether or not Marcus could really have held out as long as he did away from Neroon was toying with him is not entirely clear. Even Lanier has had occasion to remind Marcus of Minbari physical strength in the past. That being said, there is no question that Marcus is very badly beaten by the end of their fight, so much of what he does is pure force of will at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, it's really that Ranger philosophy of dying for the one that saves him, ironically perhaps. Lanier has an interesting role in this episode too, because, as is often the way, he has Delene's back, even if he's bending the rules to do it by delegating to Marcus. At the same time, there's a recognition in this episode that some of the core precepts of Minbari society may not survive the destruction of the Grey Council that has stood for the past 1,000 years. So it's good that this episode addresses that, and it's not perhaps a point I picked up on the first time round either. In much the same way, I didn't recall the telepath recruitment subplot either, and of course, as the point is jokingly made at the start of the episode, the Psychor more or less has a monopoly on human telepaths, so they're not available to help fight the shadows. Hence Sheridan's idea of trying to identify rogue telepaths who might be willing to help through Franklin's contacts. Still something of a long shot, I would suggest, but certainly their best bet. So, I must admit, this episode did actually do more for me than I thought it would. Possibly because I was focusing so hard to find positive things to say about it, given the negative way in which it is usually perceived. The Marcus Neroon struggle is well played and interspersed with the Ranger 1 ceremony. Franklin continues to struggle with the aftermath of his addiction, and Delene gets even more character development. So, after this brief pause for breath, we're nearly at the end of the third year of Babylon 5. Not entirely sure where the time's gone, but it's now 2022, and I should wrap up the remaining series this year, all things being equal. I started watching The Expanse again of late, and it's been interesting because I'm finally up to date, but going back I can see Season 1 mentions things that pay off 5 years down the line, because that's a series based on existing books. With Babylon 5 you could only guess how it was all going to pan out, and it had to do all of its own planning internally. Well, Zarg and technical difficulties with Power DVD notwithstanding, this was actually an enjoyable episode to watch, as I'd forgotten most of the non-grey storylines, but we will return to business as usual next week. Cheers for now.